As Trump's threats to expand America's presence dominate headlines around the world, China has been quietly expanding its presence in what the United States has long described its strategic backyard. And unlike Donald Trump, China is doing it without fanfare, without full-blown conflicts, and under the name of humanitarian work. China is sending its naval ships deeper into Latin America. As per reports this week, China's naval hospital ship, the CNS Silk Road Ark, docked in Uruguay's Montevideo. Officially, it is a 4-day technical stop. It is part of a global medical mission called Harmony 2025. Now, this Chinese ship is meant to provide medical services, replenish supplies, and conduct goodwill activities. But behind this humanitarian label is a much bigger message for the world, because this is not just a hospital ship. It is a fully commissioned Chinese naval vessel, and its presence in South America is part of a wider strategy. Before Uruguay, remember, the Silk Road Ark has already stopped in Brazil and Nicaragua. Next, it is expected to visit Peru and Chile, and possibly Mexico. That would bring a Chinese military vessel closer to the U.S. mainland than ever before. Now, this matters because the Western Hemisphere has been declared a strategic priority by President Donald Trump, even as the administration's national security strategy openly calls for limiting the presence of foreign powers in the region. It invokes the Monroe Doctrine, the idea that outside powers should stay out of the Americas. And in simple words, remember, the U.S. sees Latin America as its zone of influence. And so if China is now operating inside it, it must be of concern to America. Beijing, however, rejects that framing. In a policy paper last year, China said that its relationship with Latin America opposes hegemonism. It insists that it is not controlled by any third party and that its presence is about cooperation and not dominance. Analysts also say that this is a classic example of soft power with military backing. China is using medical aid and diplomacy and trade to build lasting influence and access. The Silk Road Ark is part of China's massive navy, which is now the largest in the world by ship count, more than 370 vessels and 3 major hospital ships. These missions have been sent across Africa, Asia, and the Americas for over a decade now. They offer free medical care, they train local personnel, they conduct joint activities, and they build long-term relationships with the host countries. Uruguay, where this ship has docked, is one of China's closest partners in the region. It has joined the Belt and Road Initiative, and China is its biggest trading partner. Its president has openly called for closer coordination with Beijing. For the U.S., all this raises alarm because military presence does not begin with warships and bases. It begins with access and ports and regular visits. And with normalization once, that presence becomes routine. It becomes difficult to reverse it, especially when it is taking place near vital shipping lanes with strategic infrastructure present there. China argues that it is filling the gaps left by years of American neglect, offering investment, medical support, and economic ties. So what happens next? It remains unclear whether China will make more unannounced stops, but analysts say that a visit to Mexico would count as a major escalation from America's perspective. They also say that future missions may become longer and more frequent. It's clear that China is no longer focused only on Asia and Africa. It is playing a long game in the Americas as well, and it is quietly challenging American dominance in its own backyard. Sure, this is not a headline-grabbing military standoff, but it is something more subtle. All right, moving on. The Bangladesh Cricket Board has remained firm on its stance of not travelling to the World Cup to India. This comes despite the ICC formally rejecting its request to shift the team's matches to Sri Lanka. Now, this decision comes after a meeting in Dhaka on Thursday, which was attended by the country's sports advisor, Asif Nazrul, the BCB president, Aminul Islam, and several senior players of the national team. After the meet, during a presser, here's what Nazrul said, and I'm quoting here. While our cricketers have worked hard to qualify for the World Cup, the security risk regarding playing in India remains unchanged. This concern is not based on abstract analysis. We are not convinced that they can ensure the safety of our entire team, journalists and spectators. We are not giving up hope yet. Our team is ready. We expect the ICC to provide justice by considering our genuine security risks and allowing us to play in Sri Lanka. On Wednesday, remember, the ICC had officially rejected Bangladesh's request after stating that there was no credible threat towards the team's security in India. This official statement came after several rounds of talks between the BCB and the ICC. Bangladesh are currently in Group C at the T20 World Cup, and they're scheduled to play their first 3 games in Kolkata and their last one in Mumbai. The ICC board noted that it was not feasible to make changes so close to the tournament and that altering the schedule under the circumstances would be difficult, adding that such a precedent would jeopardize the sanctity of future ICC events. The entire saga began when Bangladesh pacer Mustafizur Rahman was removed from the Kolkata Knight Riders squad in the IPL following a BCCI directive. The Indian Cricket Board did not provide an official reason for this directive, but it came amid escalating diplomatic tensions between India and Bangladesh. Remember, India has repeatedly flagged concerns about crimes against the Hindu minority community in Bangladesh. A bold new experiment in global diplomacy is shaking the world order. In the presence of a large number of global leaders, American President Donald Trump launched the Gaza Board of Peace, a powerful new forum born out of the fragile Gaza ceasefire that now threatens to redraw the lines of international authority. Supporters call it a fresh path to peace, while critics warn it could weaken the United Nations, the very institution meant to safeguard global order. According to the White House, the board members will oversee Gaza's stabilization and long-term success, including governance, regional relations, reconstruction, investment, large-scale funding, among others. Trump says that the board can act almost without limits while working alongside the UN. Even as he has accused the UN of failing to deliver peace on many occasions in the past.
We can do pretty much whatever we want to do, and we'll do it in conjunction with the United Nations. You know, I've always said the United Nations has got tremendous potential, has not used it, but there's tremendous potential in the United Nations, and you have some great people at the United Nations, but so far it hasn't.
Donald Trump will chair the board himself. He has invited nearly 50 world leaders to join him. Many countries from West Asia, including Turkey, Egypt, Saudi Arabia and Qatar, nations deeply tied to the Gaza conflict, have joined. But it is the absences that are striking. Not a single permanent member of the UN Security Council, apart from the US itself, has committed so far. France has refused outright. Britain says it is not joining for now. Sweden, Norway and Slovenia are all holding back. Canada has voiced its support, but it has not signed on the agreement so far. China and Japan are weighing their response as well. Many Western European countries fear that the Board of Peace could rival or even replace the UN Security Council as the world's top crisis manager. France's foreign minister has backed Trump's Gaza peace plan, but is against any body that replaces the United Nations. Slovenia warns that the board's mandate is dangerously broad and it could undermine the UN Charter itself. Trump, meanwhile, says Russia will join in. President Putin said that Moscow is willing to contribute $1 billion from the frozen US assets to support Palestinians, also stating that the Russian Foreign Ministry has been charged with studying the documents.
We are ready to send $1 billion from the funds frozen in the United States under the previous administration to this new structure, the Board of Peace, first and foremost in order to support the Palestinian people and use these funds for reconstruction of Gaza and solution of Palestine's problems.
Now, Trump insists that the board will not replace the United Nations and even praised its great potential. But remember, this is the same Donald Trump who has long criticized the United Nations, accusing it of inefficiency and failure, who just earlier this month had signed an executive order that in effect led to America withdrawing from over 30 UN groups. He now demands that permanent members of the board pay $1 billion each to fund its work. The board's inner circle includes the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Gaza negotiators Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, former British Prime Minister Tony Blair, and the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. A few of the leaders of the countries signing up are known close political allies of Donald Trump. The UN, meanwhile, has given limited backing to this. A Security Council resolution endorsed the board only as part of Trump's Gaza peace plan. UN officials say that any engagement will stay strictly within that narrow framework. Still, many fear a dangerous precedent, a parallel power structure led by Washington, a selective club of leaders, a forum that could bypass established rules and institutions. And there is precedent to this. Remember, before the United Nations, there was the League of Nations, which was formed back in 1920 to prevent another world war. Its failure had led to the formation of UN. And for Trump, this is a chance to reshape diplomacy in his own way. For much of the world, this is a test of trust. Is the Gaza Board of Peace a new body for global stability or the beginning of a divided international system, where the United Nations slowly loses its central role? One thing is certain, a body created to secure peace in Gaza has now opened a far bigger debate over who leads the world and how peace itself should be made. Let me go across to our assistant editor for Foreign Affairs, Siddhant Sibbal. He's joining us live from Davos. He's been getting us all the ground reports and everything that has been unfolding there. Siddhant, extremely crucial day as far as the entire world is concerned. The peace board having been signed and inaugurated by Donald Trump and his allies. But what will be now crucial to see is what this peace board does. He said that this board will work in conjunction with the United Nations, but clearly this board has a mind of his own and a personality of his own, and that is of Donald Trump's.
Well, yes, this is a mini UN perhaps being created by Donald Trump, where he is the Secretary General. That's the view which is prevalent here at Davos. We have seen many countries lining up, like Pakistan, like Argentina. Of course, Pakistan's presence here has its own geopolitical elements. Pakistan in last few months has been trying to reach out to the American administration, to the Trump administration for its own geopolitical motives, but the country continues to support terrorism into India. But essentially, when it comes to the future of this board, there are questions that is it trying to replace the UN? India has been calling for the reform of the UN, but it looks like that Donald Trump wants the replacement of the UN. In fact, countries like India, China, Russia, who have been invited, were not present at the Board of Peace the Charter inauguration. And it is clear that many will remain skeptical about Donald Trump's new, very controversial initiative.
All right, Siddhant, thanks very much for joining us at the moment. We'll have to wait and watch what happens in the next few weeks and months and how this board proposes to implement what it has decided, not just the Israel-Hamas war, but it has now expanded its role to other conflicts as well. We'll keep getting back to you, Siddhant, for more from Davos. Thank you very much for the moment.